Hello, I'm Roger Bisbee from Skill Builder, and in this short video I want to show you how to fit coving. So everything that I'm going to show you in this video, all the principles and techniques will apply to any coving you choose, whether it's ornate plaster coving or plain coving. Now a few years ago the only choice you had with plain coving was the gypsum based product, which was plasterboard basically. Very heavy stuff, very difficult to put up because you had to prop it and pin it to stop it sagging. You had to use quick setting adhesive. A little bit unforgiving if you've never done it before. But now what we've got is lightweight coving from SuperCove. Now this has all the benefits and all the appearance of the plaster-based cove without the weight, which means that you don't have to prop it, you don't have to pin it, you stick it up, stays put. It's very easy to cut and it's got nice clean sharp edges on it, nice clean lines. So once it's up there, even a professional cover would be hard pressed to tell the difference between the plaster based coving and this coving. The bit that worries a lot of people about fitting coving is cutting the miters. Now, if you take it methodically and you use the right guide for cutting the miters, it's not really that difficult a job. You just have to think about what you're doing and which way round the angles go. But if you feel that you can't cut the miters, SuperCove do actually supply ready-made miter kits that you just basically join together and then butt up to with a straight joint. But that's not the way the professionals do the job, and I prefer to cut the miters using the guides. Another SuperCove product is this miter cutting guide, which makes it quite easy. Now you can do this with a knife, and I'll show you how we're going to do it with a knife. But if you're going to do it with a knife, you're using a sharp blade very close to your fingers, so you obviously need a pair of stout gloves on to do that. So what we do is we take the miter guide and we place it on our mark. That's the bottom edge there, and it locates over the bottom of the coving very firmly. And if we're doing an internal corner, then the long end goes on the bottom, the short end goes on the top. Slice down through the coving and make that cut. And that means that we don't have to do any sanding or anything like that. The coving is nice and sharp, and it does make a good cut. And then when we cut the miter to go the other way, those two just join together perfectly easily like that. No sanding, just a little bit of adhesive on there to fill that tiny gap, and away you go. It's as simple as that. As I say, take care with the knife and you'll be okay. The other way to do it, the way I prefer to do it myself, is to use the guide that you get from SuperCove. And again, that's a nice clean cut, just a little bit more ragged because it's a saw, but if you just rub it lightly with a piece of fine sandpaper, emery cloth, anything like that, you'll find that you get a nice sharp edge, and again the perfect miter corner. As easy as that. If you want to use a miter block, SuperCove also have a miter block. The important thing to remember here is they've got a stop inside here, so don't lay the piece of coving flat like that because you'll get the wrong angle. It's got to sit up on those internal stops there, and you can then cut your angle with the same fine tooth saw that I just used there. And see, you get a nice cut there. Again, ready to go with your matching piece. Now that's the internal corner. When it comes to doing the external corner, you need to use the same miter guide but on the other side. So So that gives us the external corner. That's another way of doing it, and you simply just glue those together. The other one is the straight joint. Now, you can do a straight joint just by taking a mitre block or any other kind of saw and just cutting straight across. And that is how a lot of people would do a straight joint. But I find it very difficult to hide that joint sufficiently well when you're butting them up. And the way that I prefer to do it, and a lot of people prefer to do it, is to simply put yourself a 45-degree cut on the coving. And then when you join them up on the wall, your two bits of coving, both with a 45-degree cut, you'll find that you get a nice flush straight joint that just runs across. So the reason that mitre joint makes a better joint than a straight joint is simply that when you put it together, you can line the edges up and you can just sand it very lightly down, put a bit of filler in there, and you'll find that it's difficult to see once it's up there. A little bit of paint, a little bit of filler, and it covers a multitude of sins. But the beauty of SuperCove is that it's a finished product. It's white, it's crisp, and it's clean. And even if you didn't paint it, you'd have a good looking coving finished and ready to go. So with that little basic guide on cutting mitres over and done with, I can actually get on with sticking the coving up on the wall. So it's very important that when you're putting the coving up that you don't just sort of guess it and think, okay, that looks about central, because when you put the next piece to it around the corner, you'll find that it'll misalign and you won't get there. So what I do is I put a couple of marks on, make sure that we're equidistant. It's 83 millimeters either way, and if I'm on those marks, I know that I'm going to be spot on. So the great thing is that when you're fitting SuperCove, it's so lightweight that you don't need a huge amount of adhesive. People often snake it around all over the place, try and make it. All you actually need is a bead down either edge, and if you get that, you'll have positive contact all the way along, and that's a lot more adhesive than you actually need anyway. So once you've done that, all you need to do is run along here with a wet sponge or a cloth or anything, just to run that adhesive in there. And then if there's a gap, you can run a fresh bit of adhesive along there, just on the outside edge. Use the adhesive as a filler as well. If you need a stop end, it's very easy to make one out of an offcut. You just do an external mitre, as if you were going around the chimney breast, and then you just trim that back so it fits between the outer edge and the wall. And because it's such a small piece of coving, you can have a couple of practice runs on an offcut. So even with long coving, there may come a point where you want to join two pieces. Now the way I like to do it is to join the two pieces midway or put equal cuts either end. We're going to go for an invisible joint. Some people use a 90-degree joint. It's very difficult to get those even and to hide them away completely. So what we do is an angle joint, they call a scarf joint. So we find the midway point of the wall, somewhere around there. And the first bit we push into the corner, nice and tight into the corner, and mark it up. And that would be our first cut. Now, if we make our first cut, then we can bring the other bit in and check that it's absolutely precise. We don't need to measure and cut the two pieces in one go. So, having watched that short demonstration, I hope you agree that coving with SuperCove couldn't be easier. If you need further information on coving, contact SuperCove at their website.